We're here with the two candidates in the Ninth Judicial Circuit for Group 10. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
And the first thing that we do, not only in these interviews, but every interview that we do among candidates, is to ask you a couple of questions and get them out of the way. I'll start with you, Ms. Shepard. Have you ever been arrested?
No.
Okay. Mr. Katz?
No, sir.
Okay. And Mr. Katz, have you ever declared bankruptcy?
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Shepard?
No.
Okay. Quick question for Mr. Katz on the financial issues, because we do background checks on each of our candidates before they come in. A couple of tax liens showed up in 96 and 97?
Yes, sir, and those were paid off. That's when I had my PA. I had a PA, and my bookkeeper had a stroke, and we had issues with the tax filings, and I had that fixed, and those were fully paid.
Okay.
And they were satisfied.
Yeah, can you tell me what a PA means?
A public, it's a professional association.
I see.
It was my business. It was the law firm.
Okay.
It was the law firm.
All right. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yes, sir. There should be a satisfaction in the public records also.
Okay. The first question, and I'll start with you, Ms. Shepard, is why are you running for judge in this race?
Well, I think I have a breadth and a depth of experience that would be a great addition to the already existing expertise on the bench. I've spent 22 years in a business-focused practice, primarily working with startups, small and mid-sized businesses, helping them organize, manage, and grow their businesses, and dealing with all kinds of issues from statutory regulations to contract language to federal regulations, all of those sorts of things that are business issues that businesses encounter. But in addition to that, I have a pretty broad background. I was director of the Domestic Violence Division for the State Attorney's Office, executive director of a battered women's shelter. I was a felony prosecutor. I was an EMT. I have a pretty broad experience that I think would serve me well in this position.
Okay, Mr. Katz.
Well, I think that my experience and dedication to the legal system and my work for both as an attorney and as a hearing officer and a special magistrate for the last 16 years have prepared me for this position. I've worked as a hearing officer in the Child Support Division for 16 years. In the last 4 years, I was the administrative hearing officer in charge of the Child Support Office for Orange and Osceola counties. And in that is considered a quasi-judicial position in which I conducted hearings, made findings for a circuit court, and made recommendations on results for the circuit court judges to approve. I have extensive experience conducting hearings in various areas. I also do as a special magistrate pro bono on my own time, a specialized truancy court that deals with truancy in several Orange County public schools. And that work, plus my work in the community and in the legal field, I think have prepared me for this position.
Can you expound upon the work that you do in your community outside of the...
Yes, sir. I serve on I am actually the secretary on the Howard Phillips Center for Children and Families. Have served in that position for 3 years. I've been on that board for 6 years. In addition to that, in previous years, I was involved and was the president of the Florida Youth Symphony for 2 years during a rebuilding phase of that organization. And I worked in several other community organizations throughout the years. I was on the board of the Holocaust Resource and Memorial Center for several years. I was the first vice president. Also worked in other organizations in the community, both as a volunteer and in leadership.
Same question to you, Ms. Shepard. Activities outside of your legal work in the community.
Well, I've served in public office before. As you may know, I served as a member of the Florida House of Representatives. In addition to that, I've served on the board of directors of the Fringe Festival. I've served on the Enzion Advisory Board. I helped get funding for the Science Center. I've served on the Governor's Commission on Juvenile Justice. I served on the Naval Base Reuse Commission. So I've had a great deal of community service as well.
It's really interesting to have two candidates really well-versed in domestic violence and children's issues.
Yes, sir.
It's really unusual, and it's such a delight, you know, that you're both running against one another. But you know, what edge would that give you, or is there anything lacking in the judicial system because of your background that you could bring to you know, to the judiciary?
Well, if you're talking specifically about in the arenas of domestic violence and juvenile justice, yes, I think there's a lot in my background that I could bring to the judiciary that I think would enhance the already existing expertise that is there. As I said, I served as director of the Domestic Violence Division for the State Attorney's Office. I then ran a battered woman shelter, but in addition to that, I conceived and ran a program that became a national model for dealing with serious habitual and violent juvenile offenders. And the idea was to intervene early in their lives and try to change the criminal trajectories that they were on so that we could make them have better outcomes and generally reduce the overall crime rate. And what we found is that there was a small group of folks who were generally committing the bulk of the crime in that arena. And I think when you identify those kids early on and you intervene in a meaningful way in their lives, the community is better and safer, and their lives are better and safer. So I think all of that experience I would bring to bear in my role as a circuit judge.
I actually have dealt with this issue on a pretty consistent basis for the last 16 years because in child support cases that I've heard, you've got an underlying issue with domestic violence, and we've had to deal with that issue in conducting hearings and ensuring that there's a safety issue in the context of the hearing room. But in addition, with regard to the result of how that's going to play out in terms of the domestic violence issue between the parties. I have also, I should say, I am the chair now of the family law section of the Florida Bar, and one of the committees that I have activated and is going to come up with, which I am asking to come up with legislation to deal with domestic violence issues. Some of the gaps that we've seen lately in terms of community resources and things of that nature. In addition to that, have been asked by the Hispanic Bar, and we will be dealing with domestic violence in the minority communities, specifically the Hispanic Bar, because that has its own set of issues. With regard to the children's issues, my work in truancy court, that's a program that was developed by Judge Perry and myself. Judge Perry basically, we saw a need to go into the schools. We do the truancy program to tackle the issue, to try to resolve some truancy issues on the front end, to try to hopefully keep a lot of kids out of the back end in terms of having problems on the back end in terms of not going to school, because when kids are not in school, law enforcement will tell you they're out doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So we've been pretty successful in that program. That's been going for 6 years. I've been doing that pro bono for 6 years. And we've been able to tackle a lot of issues, and we have a pretty good success rate with that program. Some of the issues that we deal with are mental health issues. One of the things about that program that is, I think, innovative that we came up with is it's a partnership with the Orange County Sheriff's Office and the Clerk of Courts. It doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. I donate my time pro bono. The Clerk's Office provides assistance, as well as the Orange County Sheriff's Office, and we've got 4 schools, and we've actually started working we found that it is maybe advantageous to even start looking at an earlier level, and we've worked with the middle school children, and we actually are working with one middle school as a pilot to come up with resolution of truancy issues. Hopefully that will carry them into high school and resolve at an earlier level. We've tackled mental health issues, drug and alcohol issues. The other important component of that program is it includes the parents, because I think that's a problem that I think we need to really look at. It's not only the child, but how is the parent interrelated with that issue? And so the court does not start till 5:30. It is on a major bus line in case it's transportation, and we bring in the parents so it doesn't affect their work hours or their ability to get there. And that's one of the things that we've been able to do.
Well, it sounds like both of you are very active and very proactive in trying to come up with programs to fill gaps and to intervene. So I guess my question is, do either of you see a special responsibility of the court to address crime among youth? And we'll start with Ms. Shepard.
Well, most certainly I do. My background, and I think that's why I was selected to be on the Governor's Commission for Juvenile Justice, is because I spent a lot of my early career focused on those issues and trying to figure out how do we effectively and meaningfully intervene in these lives before they show up in the adult court system. Because at that point, it becomes an issue for the courts, for the community, and for the taxpayer. There are more cost-effective ways, there are more meaningful ways, not only to reduce crime in the juvenile, at the stage that an individual is a juvenile, but also to reduce the long-term effects and costs to the community of not taking those interventions early. So yes, I certainly believe that it's the court has a responsibility to identify and to try to intervene in those lives as early as we can.
Same question, Mr. Katz.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that we committed to the truancy court, and the work that we do there is because it's an early intervention process. It's a process to try to deviate and move children away from a path that is going to lead to failure. And I'm also, I would just say that my work within the Howard Phillips Center, because that organization does early intervention in terms of healthy families, things like that, and programs to deal with abuse and neglect, things like that, drew me to that organization. And I think that that's what we need to do, not only within the judicial system, but as judges, we need to move into the general community and be active with other organizations and partner with them. And that's one of the things that I have done and will continue to do.
The hearing officer position that you mentioned, is that full-time?
Yes, sir. That is a full-time position from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5.
Yeah, and you're in that position because you were appointed to that position by
Yes.
Judge Perry?
That is correct. I was appointed in 1998 to that position,
Okay.
and served in that position for 16 years conducting hearings. He also appointed me as a special magistrate, and 4 years ago I was also appointed as the administrative hearing officer overseeing both offices, because there's a hearing office for child support in both Orange and in Osceola County.
Okay. And what sort of law were you practicing prior to your appointment in '98?
I did family law, I did juvenile, and I did a lot of court-appointed work as a guardian ad litem
I see.
for abused and neglected kids, as well as in other areas of the law.
Okay. And Ms. Shepard, you mentioned having been in the prosecutor's office and then having a business-oriented law practice. How many years were you in the prosecutor's office?
I was there, I believe, about 3 years. I started there in '89, and I left in '92. So I think, depending on the month, I believe that's about 3 years, right?
And the law practice, what are the details on that in terms of the time that you, how has that continued up to the present day, or?
Yes, it has. Now, I will say that when I thought about taking this position, one of the things that I wanted to ensure, as much as I could, was to reduce the potential for conflicts of interest with seeking a public office in this kind of capacity as a judge. So I have reduced my caseload to those cases which I felt like I had to ethically continue in because of where we were at the time that at the time I was working with those clients. But so much as I could, I tried to hand off my clients so that there couldn't be any suggestion that I was influenced in particular by one particular client or another that I might have been handling.
And how often does that law practice take you into the courtroom?
Well, it takes me into the courtroom in various capacities. I mean, sometimes I'm there, and very frankly, my practice is primarily focused on trying to avoid unnecessary litigation and costly interruptive litigation for the businesses that I have represented. So, most of the time we're trying to not be in the courtroom, but when we are, we go there for various reasons. Sometimes it's, there might be an issue that requires a hearing, but not a trial, that kind of thing. So it depends on what we're dealing with at the time, but very frankly, most of my practice is devoted by its nature to trying to avoid costly, expensive, and unnecessary litigation.
Right. Since the 3 years in the prosecutor's office, do you have any idea how many trials jury trials you've participated in?
Honestly, I don't, because we don't really keep. I didn't keep track of how many hearings or jury trials or any of those things. I wasn't trying to keep a track of that because I wasn't anticipating. I didn't try to keep track of that to try to build a case for a later run for public office or anything like that. So, like most working lawyers I know, you just get up and go to work every day and you do the work that's in front of you to do. So, I didn't keep track is the honest answer.
Uh-huh. Would you say that jury trials have been more the exception in your current area?
Yes, I would, and as I said, the reason being that the primary focus of my practice has been to try to use effective strategic planning, constant negotiation, clear communications to try to avoid the necessity of a trial in the business context, because for businesses, trials are very expensive and they are very time consuming, and more importantly, they're very disruptive to the business at hand. And so what I have tried to do in my practice is to try to keep our businesses in business. And that means trying to keep them as much as possible out of the courtroom.
Mr. Katz, have you run for judge before?
Yes, sir. I ran in the year 2000.
Was that for a circuit judge or county?
Circuit, yes, sir.
Have you applied to be a judge before?
Yes, sir. I've applied several times and I've gotten out of committee on 3 occasions.
Any theories about what kept you from ending up with the position?
Not really. I mean, everybody on the list was well qualified, I think, and it was a matter of the choice of the governor's office to make that decision.
So when you got out of committee, you were on the short list
Yes,
for the
sir.
JNC,
Yes,
and
sir.
then you met with the governor's council.
Yes, sir. Several council, actually, because there was a transition. I actually got out of committee 3 times, so I actually had contact with, I believe, 2 or 3 general councils.
Ms. Shepard, have you run for judge before?
No,
Okay.
I haven't.
Have you applied for a
No.
vacancy?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Well, since both of you want to be judge, temperament is a very important thing for a
Yes,
judge
sir.
to have the right temperament, that is, because I guess recently we had a judge punch somebody and we don't want that to
Yeah,
happen.
I've watched the video. It's a learning experience to watch the video. I can tell you that I will never get to that point.
We're glad to hear that.
Yes, sir.
How would you convince the voters that you both possess the right temperament to be a judge? And we'll start with Mr. Katz.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. I have conducted myself for 16 years running hearings and in very probably high stressful environment. Child support and family law is a high stressful environment, and it's easy to get caught up in some of the issues that come before you or in some of the emotions. And I've learned throughout this process the tools that I need to use on the bench, which is to minimize the emotions, concentrate on the issues at hand, and just calmly and forcefully run the hearing room and make sure that everybody has a fair and complete hearing, but at the same time, don't let it get to that point. And frankly, the other tool that I think a lot of people, and I've learned this because I've been taught this while I was there, is if you get to the point that you think you're personally getting to the point where you can't manage it correctly, take a break, go, get a can of soda, relax, come back and deal with it. You have, situations where the attorneys can get very vociferous because they're trying to be zealous advocates for their clients. So, that presents a breadth of an experience that you need to learn coping mechanisms and the right approach. I've watched those videos. I watched that video several times, and I don't know the exact particulars, but I will never let myself get to that point. It's just not within the nature of how I would do things.
Same question to Shepard.
Well, I think fundamentally the role of the judge is to create and maintain an environment that allows the well-trained lawyers who are appearing before it to offer their best possible case on behalf of the clients they represent. And that means that you have to maintain a demeanor that is both authoritative and competent, but at the same time welcoming and inviting, so that all of the folks, including not just the attorneys who are there representing their clients, but the litigants themselves, feel comfortable and feel like they are getting a fair shake in front of the judge that they're appearing in front of, and they feel like they're being heard and that their matters are being taken seriously and with the degree of gravity and importance that it is for them, because for them, that's the only case that the court is hearing that day. The court may hear, several hundred, over the course of several months. But for that particular litigant, at that particular moment, that is the most important issue on their mind. And it's important that the court remember that when they are trying to sort out the issues in dispute and reach a fair conclusion.
Sounds like a really difficult balancing act you just described there. How are you going to pull that off?
Well, it is a difficult balancing act, but frankly, I have experience handling difficult situations in some of the most demanding circumstances. As I said, I was an EMT, and that's generally a crisis situation, and when you're handling multiple variables at the same time, when you have something as important as someone's life at stake, you develop a calm, competent, welcoming demeanor that is intended, and hopefully does, put the people in your charge at ease and allow you to do the job that you are there to do.
Of course, voters are going to be making a choice in this race. So I'd like to hear first from Mr. Katz why they should choose you over your opponent.
Well, I think I bring an incredible amount of experience and dedication both to the legal system and to the community at large. I have stayed involved not only in the legal community through my work in different organizations within the bar, within the Inns of Court, and other organizations that support and promote professionalism within the bar, but also in the community at large. I've raised my family in this community. I love this community, and I will serve this community to the best of my ability, working hard every single day for the voters that have voted for me in this election. I don't believe that as public servants we're anointed to this position. We are given this this vote of confidence as public servants, and I will serve the community as a public servant as I have served it for the past 16 years.
Well, I think that I bring a different set of skills and a different set of experiences than Mr. Katz does. The work he's done has been very fine, but I come from, frankly, a very different background. As I said, I've spent 22 years in a business-focused practice, and that's a unique set of skills and experiences that I don't think is equivalent here. But in addition to that, I have a breadth of experience beyond my business-focused practice, which encompasses all of those other important areas of the law, including juvenile justice, as we've been talking about here, and family law issues and domestic violence and all of those things that a judge is confronted with when they're on the bench. So I think I have a well-rounded perspective that gives me a unique set of qualifications to bring to the bench in this case. In addition, I think that I have maintained an independence and integrity that this paper has commented on once or twice in the past, which I think is a valuable thing to bring to this particular position, because I believe that an independent and competent and honest judiciary is the cornerstone of our democracy. It's fundamental to the way that we expect our community to work, and very frankly, I think I bring that to the bench as well, and so I think I'm uniquely qualified in this race.
Did you mention anything about your work with Barry Law School?
No, you didn't. I mean, just now? No, you didn't.
No, when you were going through your various.
No, I didn't.
Your resume, but you want to tell us about that?
Sure. I was asked to work for them to head up the public leadership initiative out there, and we were trying to bring into focus issues of public importance, and I was asked to moderate the congressional debates some time ago, the last time, I guess, that they ran. And I did that very effectively, I think, with one of your folks here. I think Mike Lafferty and the Orlando Sentinel co-sponsored with Barry University those debates, and I was asked to moderate them, head them up, and I think that they were very informative for the public, and it was important to maintain a balanced perspective in that regard, and so I think the public learned a lot from that, and I was glad to have that opportunity.
Mr. Katz, I'll start with you on this question. What do you see as the strengths and the weaknesses of the court system here in Florida?
The strengths of the court system are, I think, as a court system, we are dedicated as judges, hearing officers, and magistrates to serving the public to as well as we can, given the strictures of funding that we have, to serve as many people as we can. I think one of the weaknesses, and I don't think it's an inherent weakness to the court system itself, but funding is always an issue that you speak about. I can give you some examples of that. In terms of child support cases in Orange County last year, our office did over 1,400 cases between 3.5 hearing officers. That's an incredible workload, and obviously we could use more help. And I think when you go across the board with judges and magistrates, you'll find that that's the case, that there is more work and less time to do it in because of the strictures of the system, because of the funding it receives and the ability to deal with the cases. I don't consider it a weakness, but something I think the courts can do better is, I think the court needs to look like the public that it serves, and I think diversity is probably an issue that I think the courts would better serve the public with more diversity. That I know that was one of the themes of the past bar president, Eugene Pettis. And that's a focus. And I would say, just to that issue, one of the things that I bring to the bench is I am Hispanic. I was born in Argentina and raised here in the United States, but I speak Spanish and Portuguese fluently because of the work I did. I was also in business before I went to law school. My dad had a tour operation, and I worked with him, and we were in business together, and so I spoke Spanish fluently, and I also now speak Portuguese. So having the ability, in many instances, to be the face of the court when you're dealing with minority clients is a very powerful tool, I think. And that's something I think we can do better, and it's a systematic issue, but I think that's something we can do, and that's something that I bring.
Ms. Shepard?
Well, I think your question was about the challenges that the court system faces.
Right,
and
strengths and weaknesses.
strengths and weaknesses. And I think the strength of our court system has always been the quality of the men and women who serve in it and the integrity and independence that they bring to that role. So that's certainly a strength. And you know, in terms of weaknesses, I hate to characterize it as a weakness. I prefer to characterize it as a challenge. I think the court system faces a number of challenges, not the least of which has always been, and is perpetually, but certainly exists today, finding the proper funding and personnel to manage the ever-burgeoning population, especially in this area. It's growing by leaps and bounds, and very frankly, the reason that we have so many candidates running in this particular cycle is that the legislature created a couple of new positions, and then a number of judges retired under mandatory retirement at age 70. So we have a few new slots, but as Mr. Katz pointed out, it's quite a heavy workload. Nevertheless, I think that you know, having the experience of being able to do more with less, having to manage a law practice and try to get more done in fewer number of hours is a skill that you can bring to the bench. I do think it's important to have to reflect our community, but I also think that the most important thing for our judiciary, regardless, is that we have competent, capable, intelligent, honest, independent people serving in that role. And I think all communities, minority and majority alike, want to know that when it's their turn to stand in front of the bench, that they are going to be standing in front of the best qualified, most honest, most capable, most independent judge that they can find.
Quick follow. Do you or have you supervised anyone in your law practice? Do you have a staff in your law practice?
Well, those are two different questions.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I have, and of course my practice has evolved over the years. You know, when I started, I had a partner, and I had a different kind of staff. Now, as the law itself has changed, so has practice evolved. So whereas we used to have, for example, a full legal library inside every law office comprised of books. In fact, that took up at least a third of your law office at the time. Now our law practice is online. We can do the research and all of those things online, and it has a necessary impact on the number of people you need to accomplish that. But very frankly, the model of the legal practice is changing. It's changing from the traditional large law firm to what I would term as legal networks. If you've been practicing for a long time, you start to know who the good and qualified lawyers are in various areas. And so, as is a natural evolution in business and in the practice of law, we're starting to see, and my firm is no exception, an evolution to a practice where we network with other lawyers and provide the best possible service to our clients, because we're able to, through the advent of the internet and the ability to communicate more effectively, we are able to coordinate with each other and put together a team for a particular problem that before we would be limited to the people who we had hired and physically located in an office. So now we are able to create those networks, and very frankly, that's where I think the future of the legal practice is going.
So So do you have anybody working for you now?
As I said, at this moment, no, because, well, not working directly for me. I would say working with me is a better terminology, because, and as I said earlier in this interview, what I've tried to do in preparation for this run is to reduce my caseload and sort of divest myself of those responsibilities so far as I have been able to do. But frankly, also, my practice takes me to my clients' offices, and I work often on site with them.
Right, and Mr. Katz?
Yes, sir. I've supervised 4 hearing officers and 4 support staff in the child support office, and I also supervise 3 staff in the truancy program, the court coordinator, and the 2 case managers that work with us, and then they're under my supervision. They're under court administration, but I supervise them, and I have done that for the past, well, with truancy, 6 years and 4 years as the administrative hearing officer in Orange County, in Osceola.
We're probably approaching, coming close to the end here, but I just want to ask a quick question. Mr. Katz, you have a very long list of endorsements on your website.
Yes, sir.
Are there 2 or 3 of which you're particularly proud or you'd like to bring our attention to?
I'm proud of all of them. I'm proud of the fact that 18 bar presidents have endorsed my candidacy. I think I'm proud of the non-lawyer endorsements that I've received. To date, I've received endorsements from the FOP, the PBA, the West Orange Political Alliance, Sheriff Demings, State Attorney Jeff Ashton, and his assistant. And I'm very proud of the fact that I'm also receiving a great deal of support in Osceola County, because I think Osceola County has to be mentioned and has to be thought of here. They're part of the circuit, and I've been endorsed by the mayor of Kissimmee. I have been endorsed by Commissioner Rentis, and as of yesterday, I was also endorsed by the police chief of St. Cloud, Pete Gauntlet. And those are amongst my several and various endorsements. I have given you a list of all my endorsements here, but I'm trying to mention the ones that I'm really proud of, because they're the ones that are out there in the community doing the work and are going to be future partners.
Ms. Shepard?
Yes, well, I think it's important to mention that Mr. Katz has been running in this race since June of last year, and so very frankly, he got out there and he's got a lot of support, and that's a good thing. I think the independence of the judiciary is primary, however. I think being able to establish yourself as not beholden to particular individuals, especially those who might practice in front of you, is an important quality to bring to the bench. I have received some endorsements. State Attorney Lawson Lamar, former State Attorney Lawson Lamar, has warmly endorsed me. I've received a lot of endorsements from members of the business community and individuals in law enforcement and various capacities. I do think that's important. And I think, as I said, my effort here has been to try to both reduce the opportunity for conflicts of interest and maintain my interests, maintain my independence and integrity as I approach this position. So,
May I add something to that?
Yes.
Permitted. I'm also a believer in the independence of the judiciary. Having served as a hearing officer for 16 years, one of the first things that I did was my former law partner who did family law, I recused myself from all his cases initially, and that was well known. In terms of any issues, I think, although Ms. Shepard is correct, I have been doing this for quite some time, that these endorsements have come throughout the time that I have been running. They didn't just come about 7 months ago, and they're coming in at a pretty regular rate throughout the time that I've been campaigning, including the endorsements that I've received from non-legal organizations, as I've mentioned before, the West Orange Political Alliance, the PBA, the FOP. Those endorsements, as well as the other endorsements that I've received recently, have come after Ms. Shepard and I have been jointly in this race, and after both of us have been vetted and interviewed. So I think that's an important thing to note, that a lot of these endorsements have come while this race has been between Ms. Shepard and myself.